Hello, it's Rachel here. I want to give a brief rundown of my weekend in which I protested at the JW convention at Porirua in New Zealand. I was on my own this time. Hopefully next year I might have some company. But anyway, it's quite good being alone because then you're the boss. So and I think what I did was quite effective this year. Unfortunately, the weather on the Saturday was absolutely disgusting, freezing, wet and extremely windy, and it virtually flattened the sign that I had on the roof of my car, although it very easily bent back into shape when I got it home so I could use it again the next day. So on the Saturday I set up at the entrance, sort of like the driveway road entrance to the actual stadium building, right outside the library. I set up my pram with its sign, so I actually got the people driving into the stadium because the weather was so yucky. They were driving in and dropping off a carload of passengers and then going back out again to park, and then the poor driver would have to walk back in the yucky weather. Although I don't think it was pouring with rain at that point in time, so they were very lucky. So quite a few people would have seen my pram and the two signs that I had on it. My car with the sign, the larger sign on it, was parked perhaps in the only area around the stadium that I was permitted to park, and that was within view of the windows of the foyer area of the stadium. And a friend of mine who did attend the morning session did say that you did notice the sign because of the colours in it. It stood out, but still it was a little far away to be clearly legible. So people would have seen it if they zoomed in on their phones, but they would have been curious as to what it was. And during the lunchtime there were people walking past my car in the rotten weather to get to cafes, and some may have just been curious. You know, you get the little groups of young people, you know, like teenagers, walking around without coats on in the rain. Crazy. Anyway, I hope they took note anyway. So the weather really deteriorated throughout the day. It just got wetter, colder and very windy. In fact, it got so windy by the afternoon it was too dangerous for me to take the sign off the roof of my car. I had to drive my car somewhere more sheltered where I could take it off without it being ripped from my hands by the wind and flying onto the road and killing somebody. So in the afternoon I pretty much I met up with my friend, and she recounted conversations with me that she had while waiting in line for coffee with witnesses, and man, she had some funny stories to tell. But anyway, I'd like to get her on video to tell you those stories. But anyway, so I didn't set my signs up again in the afternoon for when they were all leaving because the weather was just too rotten, and anyone who did walk past would be scurrying head down with coat pulled over their head, or you know, it just wasn't really going to be worth it. Plus moving signs back out there was just going to be too dangerous with that very strong wind. So I packed all my very wet stuff back in the car in hopes that Sunday would be sunny, and it was. It was very hot actually. But anyway, I did have a couple of conversations with people on the Saturday morning, and one of them I have talked about in a previous video. But at the lunchtime I did have a chat with a young woman. She came over to my pram and she said, "Oh, what's this all about?" So I whipped out one of my flyers because I didn't think she was a witness. So I whipped out my flyer and she read the heading, JW.org, is it a harmless religion? And she just straight away says, "Oh, I think it's harmless." And it turned out that she was actually an unbaptized relative of witnesses. So she said all her family were Jehovah's Witnesses. And she really took issue with my signs. She said that shunning wasn't something that happened. It wasn't taught by the organisation. She said, I just had a chip on my shoulder basically because my family chose to shun me. But actually I don't have any witness family to shun me, so that's not the case. She was absolutely adamant that I was wrong, that Jehovah's Witnesses do not teach shunning. I sort of recited some of the quotes from the literature about not looking for excuses to associate with a disfellowshipped family member by email and social media, texting, etc. And then I went into some detail telling her about the video that was at the convention. I think it might have been 2016, maybe the next year. Can't remember, one of those years. But you all know is the video about the young woman who was disfellowshipped. Father asked her to leave the family home. Whenever she phoned them, it showed the mother, for example, looking at the phone, seeing it was her daughter's number, and just not answering the phone. And in the video, this went on for, it was 15 years later that the daughter was reinstated. So I'm imagining that for 15 years she didn't get her phone calls answered. Anyway, so I explained this in quite a bit of detail to this young woman who was getting quite argumentative and insulting at this time, and telling me that she's not even a witness and she knows more than me, having been a witness for 25 years, and that she's not a witness and she knows the Bible better than me. So anyway, I told her she needs to actually study and read the literature more and take more note of the videos, because being just a family member that's not baptised, she gets given probably the odd magazine, but I can't imagine her sitting down and studying them. They've watched our study articles and that. Anyway, just as she was starting to get a bit more upset, a brother came along and sort of coaxed her away from me. He sort of put his hands on her shoulders or something and sort of tried to calm her down and took her off. So, which is probably a good thing. But some of these witness sympathisers who they think they have all the information and really they don't. Anyway, so that was the interesting conversation of that day. Sunday was good. I arrived there at 11:30 in the morning and I was all set up at 11:40, and I stayed there for 5 hours on that corner outside the library, the entrance to the stadium, driveway thing. And I think my signs looked pretty good. They caught the attention, and I'm sure people driving past and through the roundabout would have seen my sign with the balloons, and hopefully they saw jwfacts.com and perhaps were curious. And at the end of the session, there were very few people really during the lunch break, as I suspected. Most of them probably had their lunch packed and had it with them at the stadium, or maybe walked in the other direction where Subway and a number of restaurants were in the shopping centre. But where I was, I would have had a much more attention from the public than if I'd been elsewhere. And there were odd people that came past, witnesses on their way to their cars, I imagine, to get things. And so they'd pass me, in both directions. And there were 2 or 3 young brothers, separate, who were on their own, who passed me numerous times during the weekend. And one of them, tall, nice-looking young man, on his own, every time he smiled and said hi or hello. And there was another young one who said hi as well. So I hope they took notice of my signs, that telling them that if they want to leave, there is support and help. And there were a few really, really friendly, one in particular, one very friendly witness who passed me numerous times actually. I don't know why he was going backwards and forwards, presumably to his car, when he should have been sitting in listening to the program. And he engaged in pleasantries with me. He was quite friendly. And at the end of the session, when he passed me, I wished him a safe journey home, and he turned around and smiled and said, "Oh, I wish you a safe journey home as well." And so that was nice. Clearly didn't think I was scary or a monster or something. Of course, none of the people that I knew from my former congregation acknowledged me at all. They're probably laughing at me, I don't know, I don't care. You know, I'm not the crazy one. I think people who think it's okay to shun their children, I think they're the crazy ones. Or to continue following the men who tell them to shun their children when they don't agree with that, because there's a lot of those as well. Because I had lots of people, especially on Saturday morning, people arriving to the convention who were saying, "Oh, good morning, hello," you know. I don't know if that's before they read my signs, but I don't know. But, you know, there was a few friendly ones. But I guess the ones from my congregation knew that I was disfellowshipped, and so they knew not to talk to me, where the others, you know, wouldn't really have known who I was. But, you know, they could see my signage was kind of a bit negative towards their shunning. And there was a little sign on the back of my big information board that said shunning is used by cults, so I had the C word there, so some of them would have seen that. I was quite pleased with the way things went on the Sunday afternoon after the session, and they were all leaving, because I did sneakily do a bit of video to see if people were looking as they drove by, and I can tell you, they saw my signs. Most heads, there was just a few, well, I only recorded for 8 minutes, but in that 8 minutes I only noticed a couple of cars where they weren't looking. So hopefully something they saw stuck in the brain, and, you know, even if they didn't have a good response to it then, maybe they'll think about it later. I don't know. Anyway, so I stayed there till about, you know, packed up about 4:45, and the nice brother that I spoke to on the Saturday, when he was leaving and he passed me, I said, "Oh, by the way, thank you for yesterday. Thank you for talking to me in a civil way, like a real person." And then I said, "God bless you." That just sort of came out of my mouth. And he says, "Oh, that's okay," you know, and then thank you. And he was really pleasant. And then I thought he was leaving, but later on, after I'd packed up, I went into the stadium itself so I could use the toilet and that, and text my husband and tell him I was on my way home. And I passed him again, and he sort of waved out. He was quite friendly. So there's hope there, isn't there? Yeah. What else? Oh, there was another couple that walked past me too, and the guy kept looking back at my signs, and then the woman called out, "Did you used to be one of Jehovah's Witnesses?" And I said, "Yes, I was for 25 years. And she went, "Oh, good on you." So I'm taking that to mean that she thought good on me for protesting against the shunning. So, yeah, and of course lots of kids looked at the signs. Anyway, yeah, it all went very well. And things are getting quite exciting in New Zealand. Things are moving, especially with the Royal Commission. Jehovah's Witnesses are definitely on the radar with the Royal Commission here, where they're looking at historical sexual abuse in state organisations, state-run organisations and religious organisations now. So things are looking very promising there. And there's other things happening as well, which in time I guess we'll be able to say more about, but it's all looking really, really good. So I will leave it for here for now. Yeah, and I will go make myself some lunch. Okay, bye bye.